One of the most asked questions lately in my DMs has been, do I regret going to Columbia? Today, I have Caroline here, who is a med student at Columbia. We're gonna talk about just that. Did we make the right choice? Do we regret coming here? Do we wish we had gone somewhere else? We're gonna answer all that. If you've never seen me before, hi, my name is Madina. I'm a third-year dental student at Columbia. I share life in dental school. I talk about admissions advice and any other questions that you may have about life in dental school. And this is Caroline.
Hi guys, my name is Caroline. I'm a second-year medical student at Columbia, and I'm super excited to be collabing with Madina today to talk about everything med and dental.
And we're actually filming a video for Caroline's channel as well, so head over there after you watch this one because we're gonna talk about choosing between dental and medical school and which one is the right choice for you. When it comes to choosing a school, I think that we can both talk about the thought process that we had based on a bunch of different factors, including location, the reputation of the school, facilities and the opportunities that the school offers, overall the prestige and notoriety of the school. Should I say notoriety? Those are all factors I've thought about personally when I was applying to dental school, and Caroline can speak to the med school side of it, but what are some factors that you thought about when you applied?
So just a little bit of background on my path to med school. I went to Columbia for undergrad, currently at Columbia for med school, and I didn't take a gap year. And I think applying in my junior summer into senior fall, I was thinking mostly about location. I majored in biology and medical humanities in undergrad, so I wanted a place with really strong narrative medicine focus, medical humanities focus. So I was kind of looking for that. Other than that, I think they recommend that you apply to 20 to 30 or 25 to 30 med schools. And so you can apply very broadly. Definitely apply to your state schools. Any other states that you might be interested in living in for a prolonged period of time or do your studies in and get experience living in that area, apply to those. So another factor that I was looking for was strong research facilities. It depends on what you might be interested in going into. So some schools have really great primary care programs, some schools have really great research programs, so also do your research on that.
It's actually interesting because as Caroline was telling me how many schools did she apply to, if you guys remember my video where I talked about what schools I got accepted, rejected from, I only applied to 8 schools, and if I were to go back, I think I would apply to fewer. So 20 to 30 med schools as the standard is kind of crazy because I think about application costs and paying each school, paying their supplemental fees. Applying is such an expensive process.
It is.
And the fact that it's 20 to 30 is the standard, you probably had to save up for a long time when you're planning to apply, because for me that was one of the main things. It was the reason why I only applied to 8 was because those places that I would be happy living in and going to, but also I didn't want to spend more money just to apply to another school in a similar area. There was 2 schools in Boston. I only applied to one of them because I was like, well, they're not that different, so I'm just gonna apply to one instead of 2 because I didn't want to spend the money.
When you apply to 8 schools, after that, when you were looking for interviews and stuff, how did you feel? Did you feel like you should have applied to more, or were you kind of okay?
I think during the interview process it was kind of stressful because, again, like I mentioned in that video, out of 8 schools I had 2 interviews, but it was 2 interviews to my top schools, so I was like, I don't mind it. But then as it got later and later in the cycle and got closer and closer to decision day, I was like, I can't believe I'm not hearing back from some of these schools. I fully thought I was a shoo-in, I was a good candidate. It was a little arrogant of me to think that because when it comes to dental schools, there's no such thing as a safety school. I only got 2 interviews, but I'm really glad that I got 2 interviews and 2 acceptances because it could have very easily gone the other way. And I'm sure if I did have to reapply, I would have probably said, okay, I should have applied to more schools, I should have applied more broadly, but I think I was lucky that it went my way. What about you? When it came to interviews, did you hear back from most of the schools you applied to?
So let me think. I had a spreadsheet that kept track of everything, but let me try to rack my brain. I heard back from a good number of schools, and I think it really varies when you hear back. So sometimes people will send in their secondaries at the end of August, maybe even really early in the end of July, but they might not hear back until December or even early January. So I don't know exactly how that process of divvying up interviews goes. So you really just do have to be checking your email, looking at that application portal and being on top of that. I think I'm happy with the number of schools I applied to. I think either 21 or 22. I think 21. The recommendation, at least for my undergrad, was try to be in the 20s. If you're over 30, it's a lot of money also. So you were saying that's a factor too. I think I was okay with the number that I applied to.
When it came to choosing Columbia, there were several factors that I considered most important. It was actually interesting because staying in a big city and close to family was very important to me, and both schools that I was deciding between were in New York, so that was great. But the other things that I was looking at were residency match rates, because when I was coming into dental school, I was pretty certain I wanted to go into oral surgery. I don't anymore because I knew that oral surgery was a very competitive field. I knew that Columbia would be a good place as a starting point to go from there. The other thing that is great about Columbia was not the case case for every single dental school is the fact that we have every single dental specialty in-house. So if there's ever a time that you want to get more experience, shadow, or just get your name and face out there with faculty to apply to those programs in the future, you have that opportunity and you don't have to go anywhere to do it. For some schools, you have to do externships to get experiences in certain specialties, and here we're lucky that we don't have to do that. The other thing, obviously, was pass-fail, and I think Caroline will agree with me that it takes the stress out of being in school.
Totally.
Because even though the classes are so hard and you're grinding still and you're studying your butt off, it's nice to not have to worry about the grade at the end or like competing with your classmates about like your rank or getting recommendations from professors based on your grades. I think it just depends on who you are as a student, but the nice thing is that you can focus on truly learning and not focusing on, okay, I need a 90 on this test or an 85 on this test or whatever. Are those some of the things you thought about when you decided to come to Columbia?
Yeah, I think very similar to deciding which dental school to go to. I think for med school, one big factor is the grading system. So I think a lot of schools are moving towards the pass-fail curriculum, at least for preclinical, and then some schools also have pass-fail for clinical year. So for Columbia, it's pass-fail preclinical, and then honors, high pass, pass-fail for clinical year. At least for our current year, we don't really know what is going to happen in the future.
Okay.
So yeah, I think the pass-fail totally brings the stress down 10 notches. Because what you really want to focus on is building a fund of knowledge, they call it. Like you build your foundational knowledge so that when you're in the clinic or in the hospital, you refer to that knowledge, but then also use your interactions to really solidify that knowledge.
It's actually interesting because some schools do the thing, even though they're pass-fail, where they do the honors. Our admin was literally like, no, we're not even gonna do honors because we don't even want to make you compete for that level. It was interesting because for some people, it was a way to stand out to residency programs. On the other hand, it just decreases competition in general. At least in my class, it has made our class so collaborative. Everybody shares study materials. In labs, if like somebody's struggling, people stay late to help others out. If you guys remember my prost vlogs, like I had so many of my classmates helping me like impressions when I had to do it for the 10th time. It makes us all want to work together that much more, I think, partly because we don't even have a whole honors ranking system, even though it's pass-fail. In a way, do I think it's kind of unfortunate that we don't have that way to distinguish ourselves to residency programs? Yes, but I think that there are other things about Columbia that make up for it.
I think also there's like interclass collaboration because we have this group me called VPNS Med and Dental.
Yeah, we do have that.
It's like everyone shares their resources, their study guides, their like, artwork for like, drawing out the brachial plexus or whatever.
Oh my gosh, the brachial plexus. PTSD right there. I remember that. It used to be a lot more active when we were in the same courses during the first 2 years. I think now it's kind of been quieted down a little bit because we've kind of gone our separate ways in our clinical years. But I think it's the collaboration in the school in general is great. So many of my classmates made like best friends with med school colleagues in PhD courses, and when we had patient as professor, we would just sit down and chat with medical students and talk about all the things that we're talking about now. So another commonly asked question is, what is the study to life balance at a school like Columbia? Honestly, it completely depends whether you're in the preclinical or your clinical portion of your curriculum, because the demands on your time are different in terms of whether you're studying or getting outside experiences. From my personal experience, I had much less time when we were in PhD with the medical school courses and taking all the systems and all that stuff and studying for exams that were very frequent, and we had exams from both our medical school courses and also our dental school courses. In the first 2 years, it definitely felt like a lot. Once we started switching more toward the dental only preclinical courses, it became a little bit easier because we were spending more time in labs than in lectures. And so the assignments took up a lot of time, so it wasn't like we were free. It was actually doing hands-on work and applying some of the knowledge that we've learned in our lecture courses. And then now in third year, when we're in the clinic, we're basically working 9 to 5, 5 days a week, but it's nice because you're not only applying the knowledge that you've learned, it's very gratifying because you're actually making a difference in people's lives, like seeing real-time changes. And that's again one of the things I love about dentistry is in restorative dentistry, it's almost instant gratification. Like doing the debridement and you get rid of a bunch of plaque, you like instantly see the difference. Or like you do a filling and it looks really nice and you're like, oh my god, that makes me feel good inside. So it's completely different. Like now I would say in my third year, when we're in the clinic mostly, I have most of my evenings free. I'm not spending every single weekend studying in the library. I am still studying because I'm studying for the boards now, but that's completely different level of time commitment than I had in my first 2 years.
Currently in the preclinical, so Columbia is a 1.5-year preclinical, so I'm in my 3rd semester. And I think that compared to undergrad, there is a little bit more freedom with your time in that the lectures aren't necessarily mandatory, but you do have mandatory small groups. Even if you do have like, free time, it's kind of spent studying or like preparing for classes or reviewing clinical material. And I do want to add, I love watching teeth cleaning videos on YouTube. Like, shorts of the YouTube videos are so satisfying.
So satisfying. I'm the same with like pimple popper videos. They're on the same wavelength to me, like the pimple poppers and the plaque cleaning videos, especially when it's just bold or there's a plaque of like people who haven't been in years. It's very satisfying. I also think about it like, oh my god, their gums must feel so good afterwards.
Relief.
Yeah, right? It's crazy. And so getting to do that in real life is very, very satisfying. I don't know if everybody else feels the same way, but I do. All right. Have you spoken to M3s that are in their clinical years? Do you feel like they have a little bit more free time?
No. Yes. I think for med school, when you're in your clinical year, and here we call it MCY for major clinical year, you're in the hospital for the bulk of your time. And then when you get out of the hospital and you're at home, you sort of take that time to either study for the shelf exams that come at the end of each rotation, or you basically use that time to prep for your patients tomorrow. So prep for pre-rounding at like 5 a.m. or like 6 a.m. the next day. I think in that sense, it's a little bit different from the clinical experience for dental school in that you're in the hospital for the bulk of your time. But after that, when you're in your 4th year, that's when you get into taking your step exams, your board exams. After that, after all that studying, you kind of get a little bit more free time.
I've noticed from medical students that I follow on social media, the M3s versus the M4s, the lifestyle is completely different. Like M3s live in the hospital, which is one thing I'm grateful for about dentistry is that our schedules are kind of regular business hours. Clinic runs from 8:30 to 4. The only exception would be the oral surgery clinic because they have like emergent cases, so they take call. But aside from that, clinical hours in the hospital are very regular, so we're not like in the hospital at these like hours, not sleeping, and it's definitely a more stable kind of thing, what to expect. It's also interesting that you guys have shelf exams at the end of every single rotation, because we had our exams, essentially we would have every single course that we're doing rotations in now. We've taken the preclinical portion and we've taken all of those exams, the preclinical portion, before we got into clinic, because they really want to make sure that before we actually enter into the clinic, because we're doing things on our own on patients, they want to make sure that we're like competent. So we have all those exams in every single dental specialty before our clinical year starts in July. And then once we do start rotations, we have like assignments here and there, but it's not like we have an exam at the end of every rotation. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
In terms of non-academic things that we participate in, I definitely did not participate in much my D1 year because I was literally just kind of floating and trying to figure things out. Didn't really feel particularly passionate about anything that much to be like, I want to be on the e-board of a club or anything like that, even though we have 1,000,001 clubs for pretty much every topic that you can think of. D2 year, I really kind of started to focus in and make a decision on kind of what I wanted to pursue. So that's when I kind of started to join more clubs. I joined the aesthetics club, I joined like women in dentistry, and then I joined CDM, which is where it's just like foodies that get together and eat and go to these places. The first event that I went to, there was like a cocktail making class, and last year they went apple picking, which was fun. But aside from that, I'm not like super involved academically. Like I have classmates who are president of 3 clubs and e-board members in 5 clubs, and I'm like, that is so much for me because I'm not the type of person to like fill every second of my spare time. Sometimes I just want to have a lazy day on the couch. I have picked 3-4 clubs that I'm genuinely passionate about, interested in, and that was my limit. And I don't participate in more than that. A lot of people participate in like student government, ASDA, and those are like bigger organizations and they require a lot more responsibility. So kudos to them, but a lot for me.
So for dental school clubs, is it that they put on events for all of the dental students and you can just go? You don't have to be like e-board member to.
Yeah, so the way it works for our clubs is that everyone's invited, and essentially we get members. So members pay dues at the beginning of the year, and then they get one first dibs to any events that we have. So we have a hands-on workshop. Those tend to fill up pretty fast. So the members that are paying members of the club will get first dibs. But everybody from the dental school, like in any year from 1st to 4th, can come. And we've actually had that like for aesthetics, which I'm the president of this year.
Congrats.
Thank you. We have people anywhere from like D1 to D4 come depending on the lecture topic, which I think is really great because it brings people together. And then you just have to, if you're not a member of the club, you just pay like $5 to go to one individual event. So it kind of just pays to join the club. What about you guys?
Yeah, so we also do have a wide selection of clubs. I think what the med school is sort of known for is VPNS club, which is the umbrella that encompasses all the interest groups, all the affinity groups, and there's a crafts club, there's a rugby club, which I think is part of the school. I'm not exactly sure about that. But the same goes for Met students. If you are on the e-board of the club, you're mainly involved in organizing. But the events are open to all the Met students who want to come. But I am on the e-board for a couple of clubs, but I also really enjoy just like going to events from different groups. So there was a infectious disease interest group. We just finished our infectious disease block. So Dr. Gordon, who's our course director for that, had this infectious disease Jeopardy where we kind of just went, had snacks and played Jeopardy, which was really fun. Cool. Also for APAMSA, which is the Asian Pacific American Medical Student Association, they host a lot of cultural events. So it's always really fun to go to those and eat good food and listen to music and make crafts, and it's always a good time.
Speaking of infectious disease, you guys remember that video where it was the worms? I couldn't watch those lectures, so I love that they actually like love spending time with Dr. Gordon, because I think she's a great person as a person, but her course, oh my gosh, did it make my skin crawl.
The Loa.
Oh yeah, the Loa. It scarred me for life. I was like never walking around barefoot. I am never going to certain places. I am never eating watercress. I'm never eating raw crab.
You remember
that course has traumatized me. Like I literally certain videos, I don't know, for some reason, flesh-eating bacteria, I'm okay with. There's something about the worms that just made my insides crawl. It's so bad.
I actually enjoy watching Loa extractions on YouTube.
Oh my god.
It's like teeth cleaning, Loa extractions.
Oh my god. Popping. Wait, they literally just pluck them out?
They kind of had to cut through the top layer of flesh and then kind of like
god. Oh my god,
no,
I could not watch that. Literally, I couldn't even watch it like, during the lecture. I had to fast forward. I just had to read the summaries because I was like, I can't see a worm crawling inside somebody's eye. I have goosebumps talking about it right now. That course was something else. But I'm glad that you guys have a whole club around it. That's fun. I love Dr. Gordon, but just the worms.
Not the worms.
No, the intestinal parasites especially. That was really like took the cake. I couldn't look at spaghetti for a month.
That was
yeah. Another very commonly asked question about Columbia specifically, how are you dealing with the debt? I'll be honest with you guys, Columbia is not on the cheaper end of dental school. Could I have gone to a place that was less expensive? 100%. Could I have gone to a state school? Yeah, absolutely. I think though that the biggest difference is, I've talked about this a little bit in my dental school cost video, you have to think about the other costs aside from tuition that are factored into your total cost of attendance and other places. Even though it may be cheaper tuition to go to another school, you have to think about things like instrument fees, because some schools make you buy your own instruments. And then also you have to think about, like, if you live in a more remote area, you have to have a car, so you have to have car insurance, a car payment, you have to pay for an apartment. And so all those things definitely have to factor into your decision. For me, when I really sat down and started comparing the full cost of attendance for the schools that I was considering, it was a difference. I mean, I think in total it was maybe like $15,000 a year difference. In the grand scheme of things, it didn't seem that much. Even though, yes, it is extremely expensive and the loans are just astronomical, I'm sure you'll agree. The grad plus loan rates are absolutely bonkers, but most dentists that are graduating with a certain amount of debt and everybody is paying it off. You take it out like a mortgage, you pay it out over 30 years and no one's pressuring you to pay it out in your first 5 years of school. That's not how it works. You can take your time, and there's loan repayment programs. There's programs where if you work in a public hospital or if you work in an underserved area where after a certain number of years, the rest of your loan can be forgiven. So there's options. Even though, yes, it is something that I'm thinking about, I'm not like sitting here stressed about the cost of my attendance, because there's a reason why I chose to go to Columbia. And yes, even though cost was one of the minuses or one of the cons on my list, it was not a big enough factor to dissuade me from coming here.
I think you covered really well all of the factors that go into the financial decision for med school. I will say that for med school, there is pretty good aid here at Columbia because Dr. Vagelos did donate a lot of money to students didn't have to graduate with a lot of debt. So I think that is a difference between medical school and dental school.
Yeah, for
the
sure.
amount of aid that is offered.
Yeah, for sure. We're actually in the building thanks to Dr. Vagelos because he created an endowment and was very generous in his contribution. I wish some of that would trickle over a little bit to the dental school. I remember our D1 year when we saw that you guys got like all this gear, we were like, why are the med students getting backpacks and we got water bottles? We were a little bit salty, I will admit, but it makes sense because the endowment was made specifically for the medical school because Dr. Vagelos went here for medical school, right? That's what it was. So like, I can't be too mad. It's nice that we still get to enjoy the facilities. So what is, if you're comfortable sharing, what would be your total cost of attendance for a year at Columbia?
I think the total cost of attendance not just tuition.
Yeah, so for the year, let's say.
For the year, I think tuition is over 60K, but I think that is similar to other med schools. It would maybe be on the upper range, but there are
in general, by the way, med school is less expensive than dental school.
Why is that? I'm actually
so I kind of have thought about this too, but the thing is, I don't know if it's because we have more equipment or if it's more expensive equipment. We do have some expensive tools. Our chairs are expensive where we see patients, but the equipment fees are kind of separate from the tuition, so I don't know why that is in general. Maybe someone who's in admin can answer that for us. It's something that I've noticed for sure, because I had a lot of friends in undergrad who were applying to med school at the same time as I was applying to dental school, and when they were looking at tuition, it's at least like $20,000 to $30,000 less for tuition in most schools, even at the same school, when you compare, which was interesting.
I think also because we're in New York City, that is where a lot of the other costs might factor in, but we're saying because we're in the city, we don't need a car necessarily. We have a subway system, and I think in Washington Heights, if you live on campus, they do have the towers, which are right behind us actually, and the prices for living in there are better than living elsewhere in the city, for sure. If you're in Midtown compared to here, it's way different. So that's another thing, is to think about the cost of living in addition to the tuition.
So that's why when you're looking at a school, don't just look at tuition alone, because yes, if you look at that specific number, the price might be a little bit scary and may differ widely when you look at schools. But if you look at the total cost of attendance, it factors everything else in, and that's where you get a better idea of how to compare when you're deciding between schools. So as I mentioned briefly before, one of the other main factors that I thought about when it came to choosing Columbia, why I still don't regret choosing Columbia even though I am no longer planning to specialize, is because residency match rates are important. Getting into med school and dental school is one thing. Getting into a residency program that you're gonna be happy at, that is in a location that you're gonna be happy living in, is so important. Dental schools participate in the match just like medical schools do. It's a very similar process. The fact that Columbia has a certain reputation does help a ton. Again, despite the fact that we're pass-fail and we don't have a class rank to show, we still have a dean's letter that specifies our achievement, our academic accomplishments, and they don't give numbers, but they do specify if we did well in the school, and therefore gives residencies a good idea of who we are as a person, as a student, as a clinician. Columbia's match rate is something like 96%, and the only people that don't match into the programs that they want to is because they either applied late or they didn't take the right exam for the right residency program. So it's really rare that people don't get the residency program that they want. In New York, because I do want to practice in New York, I still have to do a residency even though I want to do general dentistry. It's 1 year, but if you want to get into a good program, they're all very competitive, especially because it's New York. You know, there's so many applicants because at NYU, we've got Stony Brook applicants, we've got Touro applicants, for all vying for spots in New York residency programs. Even though we don't have numbers that give residencies an idea of who we are, it's the reputation of the school that does. So that's why, again, I don't regret choosing Columbia in that sense. They're proud to put out candidates that are prepared for residency, that are going to be great clinicians, and that have all the skills that are necessary. So that's why they love to talk about match rates.
I think similar. I think the match rate here is really high. I don't have the specific number, but it is in the high 90s. And that does play a factor into also choosing which med school to go to. But like Madina was saying, applying to residency is a whole nother process. Very similar to the med and dental school application, but it's really a lot more specialized. And I think, Madina, you were saying you have all the in-house residency programs, which is a huge one.
Yeah, it's a great thing because if you're applying for a residency program that Columbia has, which is all of them, they let students in during their time in pre-doc when you're a dental student, and you can go in and shadow, you can get to know the faculty that are going to be the ones that are making the decision of whether or not to admit you into their program. Having that access is also something that makes it so valuable, and that's actually something that I didn't really think too much about when I was applying, because I didn't think, oh yeah, I'm going to go into oral surgery, I'm going to be there every day. But it is something that I've learned the importance of the more time that I've spent in clinic. In terms of applications, would you say that is the fact that you go to Columbia considered a good thing or a bad thing? Because I know that some people don't like pass-fail schools. I've heard that from one of our instructors who was there when the school moved to pass-fail, and one of his friends who was an oral surgery program director was like, I'm never taking anyone from Columbia ever again because they're moving to pass-fail. But this was like years ago, and I'm sure that the mentality has changed, but same for med school?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I think because the general trend is moving more towards pass-fail for a lot of schools, residency programs understand that you can't really equate different schools. I think it is a plus that Columbia has a good reputation in producing great dental and medical students. And I think that even though it is pass-fail, it is only pass-fail for the preclinical. Currently for the clinical year, it is still honors high pass, pass-fail.
Sorry, if we look a little different, my camera suddenly ran out of storage. As Caroline was saying.
Yes, so as I was saying, even though the preclinical is pass-fail, the clinical year is still honors high pass, pass-fail. And I do think that the residency programs understand that it is subjective based on which school you go to, because not all the systems are the same. They do take into account your comments on your clinical year, your dean's letter, and then also other things that you do, like clubs, your extracurriculars, your research, and your relationships with your mentors.
If you can get good mentors and you get close to faculty or a doctor that you're working with or shadowing, that speaks a lot more to who you are as a future clinician than a grade in a class could. A lot of times my classmates will get letters from research PAs that they're doing research with, or they'll do it with dentists that they're working with in the specialty that they're applying to. Those are more detailed and more specific and can speak to your clinical skills more so than just a number on a test. Alrighty, so final verdict. Do we regret going to Columbia? I would say no. Because even though there's obviously room for improvement, that's true at any school. And I think, at least for me, the pros definitely outweigh the cons. And 3 years in, I still stand by that statement.
That means a lot, I think, coming from a current student who has been in the space for 3 years and is almost graduating, because you've been through like the entire system. I would also agree that I do not regret choosing Columbia. I do think that being in New York City and having the access to great research facilities, great mentors as well, and also I cannot forget to mention like the awesome classmates that we have is really inspiring, and I think that's what sort of drives us every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually spoken to some of the people that are on the admissions committee at the dental school, and they really make a priority of choosing students who they think are going to mesh well together. I think that they analyze us psychologically more so than they do in terms of our numbers, because seriously, they have picked people that they know are good collaborators, that are good in a group setting. And it's true, because so many of my classmates have found lifelong friends in our class. It's also your support system when you're struggling for these difficult classes. Those are the people that they keep you going and they get you through the day. And that is something that can't be understated as well, because I don't think that every dental school does that. I don't know if every med school does that, but Columbia definitely makes a priority of picking people that they know are gonna work well together. Alrighty, that is it for us. I hope you found this helpful. We actually filmed a video for Caroline's channel, so you could go ahead right on over to her channel. I'm gonna link it up top and also at the end of this video, where we talk about choosing between dental school and medical school and which one may be the right choice for you. So if you like dentistry or medicine, or if you're interested in either one and you want all your questions answered, head on over to Caroline's channel. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Alrighty, you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, wait. A little bit? Yeah, that's
Okay.
Hold it back just a little bit. We can include this at the end because I've been enjoying doing bloopers.